Hello and welcome to a beginner's guide to Dota 2, focusing specifically on, first of all, how to choose your hero. If you have played a little bit of Dota, you've definitely noticed that it's very important to choose the right hero for the right role. And so that's definitely what we're going to address in this video. And we're going to do it in three different ways. First of all, I'm going to basically help newer players or some even more experienced players show you guys a cool trick in how you can organize your player cards or these hero cards so that it's easier for you to quickly identify what are the different heroes for each role and how to use them. And so let's just start off really quickly with how you do this. If you could go into an all pick game, anytime you're in this kind of screen, you can head down either to this grid view. You can either click right here, or as it says, you can just press Control and switch you to the grid view. The grid view just basically gives you a view of all the different cards of all your different heroes. There's tons of them. And for that reason, if you go back, if you're using this view, it's impossible to find the right hero, and especially if you know you're looking for a specific role. It's just too hard to try and flip through these, and it's very hard to remember all the different heroes that you could possibly use. And so what I've done here, I've actually organized all my heroes into the kind of roles that they play and the roles that they fit in really well. Especially, I picked heroes. And I've kind of organized them by heroes that I really enjoy the most in each of these different roles. And so basically, if I go into an all pick game and I quickly identify, what roles have been filled, I can easily go back and see, okay, well, if I need a mid player, then I can instantly look at all my different mid players, different heroes, and it's very easy for me to choose one that will work well for me and will fit for my team. This is super useful in random draft. This is a really fun game mode. The only problem with random draft is they don't give you any time to pick your heroes, and so you end up just kind of picking, really quickly without being able to think it through. But if you're looking at this screen and you get a random draft, you can instantly see just how many heroes there are of each role. You can instantly see what your favorite heroes are always on top. It's just so much easier. And so we can definitely look at that later, but this is just kind of one thing I wanted to start with. But the first problem here now, of course, I've organized these in different roles, but if you don't understand the different roles for all these different heroes, there's no way that you could possibly organize this for yourself. So the second thing I want to do, I'm going to do this in two different ways. In order to learn the meta, I've learned the different roles that people need to play in Dota 2. We're first going to look at a professional game and see how the game works on the highest, just kind of this ideal professional level. Of how the different roles, especially on the professional level, the roles are very specific, and everyone plays very specific, and it plays a very different game depending on what role they're filling for their team. And so we'll look at that, and then afterwards, the last thing we'll do is we're going to look at a regular pub game, one that I've played, and we'll look at that replay, and I'll kind of show you the differences and how the meta changes, and kind of compare the two kind of strategies, and it'll help you to really identify, what's important, what makes a hero really good for each specific role. And so we'll do that. And then lastly, I think we'll go through and I'll just kind of point out some really good heroes for each of the different roles. So if you're a new player, we'll definitely show you some good heroes to start with, because all heroes are great, definitely, in Dota 2, but some heroes are great in more situations than others. And so if you pick a hero that's going to work well in a lot of different situations, or that's going to work well, in more cases than not, that's going to be so much easier for you as a player, especially if you're trying to learn the game. And so first thing let's find a professional game. So let's load one of those up. Okay, here we are. This is a game from the International Qualifier. The winner of this game gets to compete in the International, which is where they'll be able to compete for millions of dollars. And so the International is a good place to look for professional games because it's Valve sponsored and is therefore free to anyone else who wants to watch the games. So if you're looking for professional games, the International is a great place to look, any of the international games. And so now when we're looking at the roles on the professional level, so this is definitely the ideal case. These guys, they put a lot of effort to get, to absolutely maximize things. And so what they're going to do in the ideal case, you actually are going to pick two different people on your team. Sometimes you can do more, but for the most part you want two people on your team who are going to be your real killers. And there's two, and they kind of do it in different ways. And so the first guy right here, in this case, is Silent, is playing the gyrocopter. He's playing the hard carry, or in the professional scene we would actually number all of the roles. He's playing the 1 spot, and basically if you're a 1, that means that you should be getting you have first priority for all of the farm in the game. Your job is to get money, and the more money you get, the more powerful your team gets. Whereas Whereas if you were a 5, you would always sacrifice your own money to allow this guy, the 1, to get as much money as possible. And so when he's playing this 1 spot, his goal is to get as many right clicks, as many last hits on these creeps as he possibly can in order to get a whole lot of money. And so now the first thing you probably notice here is that there's absolutely no one else in this lane. He's just sitting here getting complete free farm. The reason that is because the 4 and the 5 spots, who are actually more like supports, are here in the jungle 24/7, and their whole job is to stay close, and so that if anyone ever came into this lane, they'd come and they'd try and gank, they would protect, they'd do whatever they could in order to scare anyone else out of this lane, because their goal is to get this guy as fed as possible. And the interesting thing on the professional level is that they are so aware of this strategy that they aren't, a lot of times they won't even contest it, because it usually doesn't work. But obviously in a pub game it goes a lot differently. But in this case, they've created free farm for their carry, and that is the ideal case for your team. And so this is the 1 spot. Here's Silent. He's playing Gyrocopter. His goal is to get as much attack damage as quickly as possible, and this is really going to come into play in the end game because he's going to be doing the most damage. So your number 2 killer is playing the 2 spot, and the 2 spot comes here to mid. So the advantage of playing mid, the thing about mid is that the towers are very close together, and so at any time you're almost always able to run quickly back to your tower, and it allows you to be a lot safer here in the mid. It's very difficult to gank someone in mid because they almost always have a tower to hide behind. And what this means is that you can play here alone. He doesn't need 3 guys to babysit him because he has the tower to babysit him. In that case, it means that even though he may not get a lot of last hits here, which means he's not going to get a lot of money because you're constantly fighting with the other guy. But you are going to get 100% of the XP in a complete solo lane. Whereas the Gyrocopter often has to share his lane with his supports, he gets very few levels, but he gets a lot of money. Here in mid, he doesn't get as much money because he's fighting with the puck in this case, but he gets all the levels. And so that's the difference. One guy we're trying to get money. He's the 1 spot, he's the carry. Our 2 is our nuker, ganker, mid guy, and he's the 2 spot. He's trying to get as many levels as possible. And so when you get these levels, it allows him to level up all of his abilities, and each of these abilities does more and more damage every level he gets. And so the more levels he gets, the more damage he does. And so that's your 2 spot. He's your nuker typically. He's going to want a guy who takes advantage of levels and uses it to just completely rock the mid game. So when we look at when the game goes into mid game, it's really going to be this guy's job to kind of be the number 1 kind of leader. He's going to do the most in the team fights. When it comes to the end game, you're definitely going to look at this guy to do the most in the team fights. And so that's kind of the 2 different kind of heroes, and so you have to choose a hero that fits these things appropriately. So let's say we're playing the 1 spot. What makes a good 1, a good carry? Anything that gives you a right click damage modifier. So if it gives you bonus damage on your right clicks, that's always a good thing. Because if you're going to be putting all your money into your attack damage, if you get an extra 30% modifier to that, that's 30% of a whole lot, and that makes a big difference. So right click modifier. So where Gyro in this case has another useful property for carries, which is a cleave. Basically, he uses this flat cannon. It allows him to shoot anyone around him at the same time. So instead of shooting enough team fight, instead of shooting just one guy, Gyrocopter is actually shooting all 5 of the other guys on the team. And that's what makes him so strong, is that if he can get a lot of damage, he can use this and actually kill the other team at the exact same time, kill all of them. And that's one huge advantage, or one really good property for a carry, which is a cleave. Other heroes you can do this are like Sven. Any sort of cleave is a big deal. Whereas Gyro doesn't actually have any attack damage modifiers, he's definitely just going to rely on this cleave to really give him the advantage as a carry. In this case, in the professional scene, it really doesn't matter if you're ranged or melee, because you have your 3 guys who have created free farm anyways. And so you don't have to compete with anyone. So range really isn't that important on the professional scene, but that definitely changes when you go to a more pub style kind of game. And so that's really what I can think of right now is your attack damage on your carry. Another big thing to have on a carry is an escape. Escapes allow you to push lanes, and then I think you can push lanes a lot farther because you can escape better. And so heroes like Phantom Lancer, who has a really good escape, that helps him to be a really good carry because he can get more farm, because he knows that he can farm lanes he can push lanes a lot farther, and he doesn't have to be as scared all the time because he knows he can escape anytime he wants to. So that's another really good quality for your carrier, your 1 spot. On your 2 spot, you want AoE nukes. And so here this Magnus, his ultimate does a huge AoE stun, a huge AoE nuke. It gathers everyone together, and then this will do, once he gathers everyone, he could use this nuke and this other nuke to hit the entire team. So basically, he has 3 nukes that he can use on the entire team. So that's really what you want is someone, having a single target nuke is great, but it only works on one person. In a team fight, hitting multiple people is the way to go. And so when you're choosing your mid, you want an AoE nuker. And so you'll notice, so Magnus is a great choice, and Puck is also a great choice on the other team. This Puck also has AoE silence, AoE nukes, AoE, he has a coil that traps everyone in an AoE. I mean, it's just very AoE oriented. That's why you'll see people like Queen of Pain is a great mid because she has a lot of AoE nukes, and so that's a great thing to have in your mid player. And so now let's look at the 3. So your 3 is the guy who's playing this suicide. We call it the suicide lane because, as I said, if they have 3 guys in this lane and all they want to do is gank you, it is almost impossible to be in this lane. And here in the professional scene, the suicide laners actually almost abandon their lane. At high level play that's non-professional, they typically won't completely abandon a lane. It's just that's just the respect they have for the professional players and how coordinated they are in their this defensive tri lane around their carry and how good they are at ganking. They'll just abandon the lane sometimes. For instance, but you notice that here are the 2 choices. On one team they chose Lone Druid, who has a bear, which means the bear can a lot of times he can sneak in and get a last hit, while the Lone Druid is still in the back. And so that's what makes Lone Druid so useful as a suicide laner, because he can use his bear to get last hits, but he's sitting safely behind. And so that's one thing you can do as a suicide laner. This other option is Darkseer. He puts this Iron Shell on the creep line, but then he actually doesn't even have to go with it. He can literally hide here behind this tower, and this Iron Shell is doing damage and getting last hits for him. Without him even having to be up close. And so typically you're trying to pick someone with a really good escape so that if someone tries to gank them, they can get away. And if they can have some sort of spell that allows them to get last hits without actually having to be close in the lane, that's also really good. And so that's what you're looking for in this kind of suicide laner. It's a very difficult position to play because it's just 1 versus 3. That's always going to be hard. So your goal as a suicide laner is to get whatever XP, whatever money you possibly can. You're just trying to make the best of a bad situation. And then when you're looking at your 4 and 5s are your supports. The whole point of our supports are the goal is that these guys aren't going to get any money because they're giving all their money to Gyrocopter. They're not taking any farm. They're not going to get a lot of levels because whenever they can, they're trying. If anything, if they're either in this tri lane, in which case they're splitting XP 3 ways, and they're here trying to farm a jungle, but they're not really even good junglers, and so they get very little just anywhere. And so the goal is you're trying to pick characters who have maximum impact with little for the least amount of money and least amount of levels. And so someone like Treant here, he has his alt is just a spell that traps everyone. He's got heals he can throw everywhere. He's trying to support the team without having to be, without having to have a lot of money to do it. And in our other case, our other support is Rubik, who's he's a great support because he's got, when you look at supports, you want someone with stuns. Typically, if you can stun them, then your carry can do the damage and kill them. And so you want someone with stuns that allows him to gank better. He's got 1 AoE nuke, and then he can actually steal spells from the other team. And this just makes him a really good support. So, but these are kind of the different ideas. So quickly, we've seen on the professional scene, we choose one guy to be a super hard carry, and we create a lane of free farm for him. We have another guy who's going to play the mid, who's going to just be your mid-game ganker, AoE damage nuker, and he's just trying to get levels. You have one guy who's just trying to make the best of a bad situation. He's your 3. He's out there in the suicide lane, hopefully getting some levels or some last hits, whatever he can. And then you have 2 supports who usually have stuns, heals. They need to have some way that they can help their team without needing money to do it. And those are the kind of 5 spots. And so for here, you've kind of got an idea of the different roles you can play on the professional scene. We're going to look at a pub game, which works very differently. And we're going to look at how that changes and how when you choose your heroes, how you might want to choose them a little bit differently. But it's very good to start here with the ideal perfect case, because that's really going to show you where this jargon comes from. What does 1 to 5 mean? When people are talking about carries, like what are they talking about? And so I think this is a great start. So now we'll go ahead and I'll load up a game, basically just a pub game that I've played. So let's load that up right now. Okay, here we are. This is a public game that me and my friends went ahead and played. So let's look at the difference here when we play a public game, and this is obviously going to be more like how you're going to play when you play your games. The biggest difference here is how we lane it. You'll remember from a professional game, we usually take 1 carry and then have 2 supports in the bottom, so you have what we call a tri-lane. You'll take 3 people in 1 lane, and they're going to create absolute free farm for their carry. In the public game, that doesn't happen. Why don't we do tri-lanes? The biggest reason is that running a tri-lane in a pub game I mean, it requires a lot of coordination between the players. I mean, they all have to work together, have to be on sync. It requires people knowing how to pull the jungle, and you're just if you don't even know the people you're playing with, it's just a lot harder to do. It is better, it's just harder. For that reason, typically, in a public game, you're almost always going to default to what we call dual lanes. It's just a lot easier this way. And so you'll play two people bottom, and then you'll play two people top, and you'll play one person middle. But some of the same rules still apply. What we'll usually do in every lane, we'll try and choose someone who's going to be the farmer, and so in which case will probably be what we call, a carry, someone who's going to use the right, the money that they get from getting last hits to buy better items. They'll give them more right-click attack damage. And then you'll pair them up with someone who doesn't need any farm. And so you'll pick a support, someone who can stun, someone who can heal, someone who can help without needing any money to do it. And so in this case, here's me. I've chosen the Drow Ranger. And then my friend here is playing Rubik as a support. And another example here up top, we happen to have a Phantom Assassin as our carry and a Bane as our support. And then you'll have another player who plays mid. And so mid works a little different. Okay, here's the big difference here between a public game and a professional game. If you remember, in a professional game, the gyrocopter was definitely going to get the most last hits in the game. And that's just because they created absolute free farm. But here they haven't actually created any free farm at all. We're actually doing pretty well in this lane, but typically I mean, we usually don't do as well. It has to do with kind of your hero composition. But here a carry can expect in the first 10 minutes to get, I usually get between 20 and 30 last hits in the first 10 minutes. And here in this, since I'm playing a Drow Ranger who's ranged, I'm actually going to get somewhere between probably 30 and 40, but that's definitely not usual. But when I play middle, because I'm here and I'm protected by my tower, I'm just constantly going for last hits. No one's going to try and kill me for the most part. I can usually get, about 30 last hits. And so in a public game, the person who goes mid will probably get more last hits than any of the other carries. And so this actually is kind of a unique feature because here, your middle player is not only going to get the most farm, but he's also getting the most levels because he's here alone. He's getting full experience. He's not sharing it. So for that reason, your middle player is definitely the most important person on the team. And it also opens up kind of this new kind of style that you don't see in the professional scene, and that's kind of having a mid carry, someone who's a carry who can get huge attack damage, but he can also play middle. And for that reason, he can get a lot of money and a lot of levels right there in the early game, and then he can use that to be powerful in the mid game, and then he can continue to use his attack damage and carry kind of characteristics of his hero to become very powerful in the late game as well. So he can be powerful all the way through. But you can still also play a middle player, just the same way as you would in a professional scene. Someone who just uses a lot of dukes, you can take advantage of levels. That's still definitely valid, but you definitely want to make sure you have other people on your team who are going to become those carries. So if you know you have some good carries in the other lanes, then you can definitely have a mid hero who's just more gank oriented, who's just going to be powerful in the middle game because by the end game those other heroes are going to catch up. And so that's really interesting though, is that your mid player, you can play kind of this mid carry, and I'll show you guys some good heroes that you can do that kind of mid carry style, as well as some good heroes who play more just kind of that ganker AoE nuker style, because both are definitely valid. And so here we're looking at this. We know we've got a carry and a support in each lane. And so let's talk about what makes a good carry and a good support. Being a support is just like it was in professional scene. Someone who has nukes, who has stuns, someone who can do something without any money. But here, if you remember, when we looked at the gyrocopter, he had complete free farm. It didn't matter what he did, he could easily get last hits. But here, if I'm here as a ranged hero playing Drow, it's actually much easier for me to get last hits in a lane than compared to, for instance, the Phantom Assassin who's up here, because the Phantom Assassin's melee. So every time he goes in for a last hit, he's just standing way too close to the enemy. They can harass him, they can attack him. And so for that reason, melee heroes are always going to be more difficult to get farm with in the early game. So that's something you should probably take into account. And that doesn't mean you can't play melee carries, because actually there are very few ranged carries to even go around. But be aware that it's going to be more difficult. You definitely are going to want to have a ranged support. If your support is melee, there's actually very little that a melee support can even do in a lane. There's definitely strategies you can build around it, but it's going to be a lot harder. So let's say, what if you do find yourself in a lane where you're both melee? I would say, for instance here, a Clockwork and a Dragon Knight. You probably what you're going to want to do is look for ganks you're going to want to play very patient. You're not going to win on every single last hit, but if you can get kills, then that's okay. Because if you're getting kills, you're getting money from those kills, and the enemy and the other heroes are losing money from those kills. So that's definitely a really important thing. And so I mean that's another way that you can try and play the kind of melee carry with a melee support. I mean, if you're in that situation, play patient, wait for them to push too far, and then go for ganks, because you're not going to win the last hits for the most part. But yeah, so I mean that's definitely some interesting things, but definitely the same things apply. So okay, now let's go back. I'm going to go back. I'm just going to start identifying. Now you understand the different roles. We have mid gankers, we have mid send or mid carries, we have carries, and then we have supports. And so we'll go back, we'll look at the different heroes, and I'll show you some really good examples. If you're new, what is a good hero who's going to be really successful? That's going to help you a lot. Okay, here we go. Let's look at the different heroes as we try and pick our different positions. So here's how I've organized my hero cards. I've taken my carries and I've put them. These are guys who play strictly are just carries. They're kind of lane carries. I mean, they're not necessarily mid heroes, and they're just pure on carries. Whereas here I have mid players, or these kind of mid heroes. And then here I kind of have these mid carries. Heroes you can either be a carry or play mid, and it can kind of fit that mid carry role that I was talking about earlier. And then over here we'll talk about these are suicide laners. Suicide laners I mean obviously they have a place if you're playing more like a professional style game with the 3-1-1 kind of setup. Then you definitely need one of these guys. These are guys who can be in their own lane, even if they're not a middle. But also this does have a place when you look at public games, because a lot of times in public games you'll want to have a jungler. Here are some different junglers I have. When you play their jungler, obviously that guy is going to be in the jungle, and they're not going to be in their lane. That's going to abandon one hero to be absolutely alone against two other heroes. And really, a lot of times in public games, people do that, and then people don't know how to pick a hero that can handle being alone, and because there's only certain heroes can really do that. And so that's definitely a big mistake. Don't pick a jungler unless someone has already picked some sort of solo, just one of these suicide laner type heroes. And these are all just heroes who have really good escapes who can handle being in their own lane alone. So here, these are our solo suicide laners who should be paired up with either like a jungler, or in the case of a professional style game, you play a suicide laner and then you set up a tri lane with two supports. But those are kind of the two different reasons you'd need to use these suicide laners. Like I said, these are junglers. These are actually jungler kind of carry junglers. These guys will turn into kind of carries late game, but they start off in the jungle. And these are kind of support junglers, people who start out in the jungle but turn into supports. And so depending on if you already have a bunch of carries, you probably don't need one of these carry junglers. But if your team doesn't necessarily have a lot of carries, you might want to pick one of these kind of guys. If not, you'll want to pick a kind of a more support style jungler. And these are our supports here. So I put my favorite up top. And then I've separated out, these are kind of range supports, whereas these are your melee supports. Because like I said, you can't always play a melee support. I mean, you can, but you really have to design kind of you have to have a plan how you're going to make that work for the most part. So I separated them out. If you're doing a tri lane, you can use these melees, or if you're going for just a real gank oriented lane, then you can play one of these melee supports. But they definitely require kind of a different kind of plan. So I've separated out my range supports and my melee supports. And then these are heroes who are not currently in captain's mode. So I typically don't play these heroes. They haven't necessarily been perfectly balanced for the professional scene. So I typically just don't play them. But you probably will play these, so you'll probably have to figure out where you want to place these heroes. But I've just put them off to the side because for the most part I don't play them, except for Abaddon. Gotta love that hero. So let's go in and I'm going to give you an example of I'm going to pick out at least one good hero for each of these positions. So if you're new and you want to try and play these positions and try and get a feel for how you play these roles, I'm going to tell you what hero you should start out with, because all heroes are good, but not all of them are going to work, don't work all the time. And so I'm going to pick heroes who are just going to be a lot easier for you to be successful with. And so let's look at our carries here. These are pure carries. This carry, you're going to play them in a lane. You're probably not going to play these heroes mid. I'm going to say if you want to play a carry and you really want to see how effective carries can be, I would start off with Sven. Like I said, he's melee, so that does make it harder in the early games, but make sure you're patient. If your lane doesn't allow you to get last hits, that's okay. You'll make it up later. But Sven is really, really good hero just because, he doesn't even need that much farm to be super effective. Here, we'll change view here, and I'll look at some of the abilities. Why am I choosing Sven for you? Number one here, his alt is God Strength, because like I said, a good carry should have something that gives him bonus attack damage. Here, he literally gets plus 200%. He gets 3 times damage. I mean, that's huge. I mean, there aren't very many other carries who can compete with the kind of damage that Sven can do as a carry. So this is huge, having this God Strength. Then second, I said having a cleave, or the ability to hit multiple heroes at the same time. That's very powerful, and Sven has one of the best cleaves in the game. And so you really can't compete with how effective the cleave is on Sven. And so he has both those, attack damage and cleave, and that makes him very dangerous in a team fight. And then lastly, I like to pick good carries who are going to be effective in the mid game. Most pub games are going to be decided in the mid game, whereas in professional games they make a lot of money in the early game. The early game is really important, and they can kind of take that through. And the game, it doesn't rely on the mid game necessarily as much as a pub game does. In a public game, if you don't win that mid game, your carries are almost never going to get the farm that they need. And if you die too many times, you're just going to feed too many kills. There's just too many kills that go in a public game, and so you need to be winning those. And so when I pick a carry, I like a carry who's going to be effective in the mid game. And Sven, because of the Stormhammer, is a nuke and an AoE stun. He can do just a lot of damage, even if he doesn't have a lot of money from the very early game. That's okay, because he can make it up, and he can still be super effective in the mid game just using the Stormhammer. And then with God Strength, it doesn't matter how much farm he has, he's going to do a decent amount of damage anyway. So Sven is a great place to start if you want to learn how to play a really good melee carry. Sven is definitely the way to go. But then there's definitely ranged carries. For instance, Drow is a great ranged carry. She's a little bit difficult to use. But a lot of these range carries I actually have here in this mid carry role, because having range is very effective when you're playing middle. It's hard to play middle with a melee hero. For that reason, a lot of these range carries you can also play the middle, and a lot of times that's the best place for them, because playing mid lane, you'll usually get more farm than you would playing in any other lane. And so these are some heroes you can play either as carries. You can put these heroes in the lane, or you can play them middle. So Shadow Fiend's a good example. He has a lot of these raises that give him a lot of nuke damage in the early game, but then he also has a lot of skills that give him a lot of just pure attack damage. And so you put him mid, he gets a lot of farm, he just does huge damage mid game, end game, all game. It's just a lot of damage. But if you're new, because Shadow Fiend can be a little difficult to use, Luna is also a great carry. If you're new, I would play Luna, but I would play her as a carry. I wouldn't play her in the middle lane. Because she doesn't have much range, but she's very fast, and so that works pretty well for her in the lane, but in middle it doesn't work nearly as well. She's just a little bit too squishy. For that reason, but Luna's a great carry to use in the lane if you're new, so I'd play either Sven or Luna in the lane. But if you want to play that mid carry role I was talking about, I would try Viper. He's easy to use. I mean, most of his skills are they're just very easy to use, and Viper gets a lot of damage in the early and the mid game, especially as he gets levels when he's in mid. And then he also has a ton of really good slows, so as a mid player he can get those levels, get that advantage, and then he just becomes just a terrible ganker. He can go around, if he grabs you with his slows, there's no way to get out of it. So if you want to try that that mid carry role, start with Viper. You'll have a lot of success that way. So if you want to play just a pure mid hero, like we said, kind of that mid AoE ganker style mid player, I would start with Puck. Puck is very difficult. You're going to need to watch guides on how to play Puck, but he's just very effective. He fits that role perfectly, that AoE damage, and he just fits that role very well. So if you want to learn how to play middle, and you want to play middle like a professional would, as kind of that mid ganker style, who just has AoE, who wins with his levels, who doesn't necessarily win with money, but wins with levels, learn how to play Puck. That's probably the place to start, and it's just a very effective hero that you're definitely going to need to learn how to play. So let's say someone on your team had picked a jungler. I would say, let your team know, tell me you're going to play solo, and then pick one of these heroes. These are your suicide laners. It's going to be you against 2 other heroes, but you're going to pick heroes who, like we showed in the professional scene, we saw how Darkseer and Lone Druid are great choices, and how they can get last hits without endangering themselves. But I would suggest Weaver. Weaver is probably, he turns into a carry, but he can still, because of his Shikushi, he can go invisible and get max damage, and so if things go poorly, he can just disappear anytime he wants. So I definitely suggest, if you're playing alone, try Weaver. Also, maybe if you're just playing in a lane, and if you're on the hard lane rather than the easy lane, and you're afraid that the other team's going to try and gank you, picking any of these heroes is still a good idea, especially carry-oriented suicide heroes like Weaver. Just kind of hard lane heroes would be another way to call it. Um, that's a good choice because if someone does try and gank you, having a hero who has a good escape, such as Clinks or Weaver or Bounty Hunter, is going to be very good for you. And so, but I definitely suggest if you're new, you want to try playing a solo lane without any help, and it's you against 2 other people. Start with Weaver. He's very effective, and I think you'll have a lot of success with that. So if you really want to play a jungler, playing a jungler can be bad because don't pick a jungler unless you know someone else can pick a solo laner, someone who can play alone, because not every hero can do it effectively. But if you do that, here are some really good heroes. And I've separated out. These are jungler carries who turn into carries late game, and these are jungler supports who turn into supports late game. I suggest Ursa. He just does crazy damage. He's super effective in the jungle. Yeah, you can roast super early on. Learn how to play Ursa. That's a great place to start. And if you want to play jungler support, play Enigma. He's one of the best junglers in the game, and his ultimate is just super powerful in the team fight. So, lastly, we'll look at supports, and 2 out of the 5 players should always be supports in the game. And sometimes more than that. And so you should really learn how to play support and learn how to play it well. If you're new and you want to pick a good support, I suggest starting with Lion. Lion, especially in the laning phase, he's got a ton of stuns and disables, and then later on when he gets his ult, he gets a huge nuke. And when you're playing in a lane, there's a lot of ganking that goes on, and that stuns can also help to neutralize a gank that's going the other way. And so Lion is just super effective in a lane, and he's the kind of guy you want supporting you. So if you want to play a good support, start with Lion. His nuke is also it nukes people in a line, so he can actually hit multiple heroes. And when you look at a team fight, having a nuke that hits multiple people is the best kind of thing a support can do. Having a stun that stuns multiple people, that's the best thing you can do as a support. Because if you can stun the entire other team at the same time, that's going to allow your carry to just tear apart the entire team because they don't have to be worried about taking damage. Rubik is good, but he's a little difficult. But I would say Jakiro. Jakiro is the 2-headed dragon. He has the best AoE stun probably in the game. His ice path can just stun the entire enemy team sometimes. It just completely denies the kind of padding that they can do. It's a great hero for just being a really good team stunner. And so if you want to do really good in a team fight, you want to be that support who really makes plays and allows stuns entire other team at the same time. Play Jakiro and use that ice path. Also, his ult does a ton of AoE damage. You place that in a team fight, it completely changes the dynamic of that team fight. And so Jakiro, if you want to play good support, Jakiro's weaker in the lane, but he's better in the team fight. Lion is stronger in the lane and not quite as good in the team fight, but he's still a good hero. And so I suggest trying those 2 heroes and trying to learn how to play support well with those 2 heroes. And so those are some heroes I suggest for your new players. Those are heroes that are going to be effective in those roles, and you're going to find success if you just learn those heroes and how to play them well. So I think this is really good for a new hero. This is it's a lot to take in, but you'll figure it out with repetition, and having this knowledge going in is going to help you a ton as you figure out the game. And every time you play, and every time you kind of look at these ideas, it's going to make more and more sense to you. So I think there's definitely a lot more we could do. If people are really interested, we could do more videos. We could definitely look at how to actually lane a hero, or maybe we could pick out a carry. We could pick out a specific hero, teach you how to use a specific kind of hero, as well as teach you how to lane effectively, or how to play support, or how to play carry effectively in a lane. We could do how to play mid properly. Playing mid is very unique. And a lot of new players don't actually know how to play mid properly, and so that's something you definitely need to learn how to do. And so that'd be an interesting video to do. But yeah, if you have any other interests, definitely I would go ahead and comment below and let me know what what you're interested to learn more about. If you do want to see more videos, make sure you like or subscribe. That helps the video become more popular. And so I don't know what kind of response, but if the responses were good, then we'll definitely do more videos depending on what kind of response we get, and whether this is really helpful for people, and whether it's at least or more or less interesting, or at least as long as it was helpful. I guess that's the most important part. I'm going ahead and I'm going to load up some random drafts. I want to show you how effective when you do these hero cards, if you set this up, how much that's going to help you when you do random draft, how it's going to help you see what are the heroes that are available. It's going to help you choose out, how to pick good heroes, and pick out good heroes for your team, and how to pick a hero that's going to fit your team very, very easily. But yeah, I'll go ahead and end with this, and then I'm going to switch over real quick to a couple of random drafts. But for the most part, I hope this is helpful. Make sure to leave any comments or any questions you have below. Okay, here we go. This is a mock random draft. I'm just playing with bots, but just to kind of give you an idea. So here I go to this card view and I can instantly see, what's available to me. So I've got a good range carry here. I've got this kind of mid carry Luna available to me. I've got a good Dark Seer, and then I've got kind of a jungler Doom. He's kind of a mediocre jungler. The supports are just not a lot of good supports, and so I mean it's a good thing that our team, happened. And obviously these are just bots, but our team picked out Lion, who was definitely the best support available. So that was definitely a really good first pick for us. So we got one support. We need at least one more support. I think Leshrac is our best choice. That or we can try and make a melee support work with like a Treant. He's a pretty good melee support, but I'd probably choose Leshrac if I could choose. But our team went ahead and chose Necrolite. And then we got Sniper. He can play. He's kind of again a mid carry, so he can play mid or carry. So we have one carry, one middle or carry. We definitely need one more. What we're missing is either a mid player or another carry. We can play that. So if I look at mid, the only options I have are Tinker or Slark. Depending whichever one if I feel like doing that. That or we can just play Sniper mid, and I can play Luna as a carry, or I can play Luna as a mid carry and then put Sniper in the lane. And so that's kind of, depending on what this guy chooses. So he went ahead and chose another carry, Razor, who I don't even see where I have him. But anyway, so he's, so there's another carry Razor, and so I'll definitely need to pick probably Luna here so that I can play middle or carry, either one. So that's probably how I do it. So that's kind of giving you just a quick idea of how probably the biggest thing. You can look at this and I can instantly say, oh, here's a good hero, here's a great hero, here's a hero I really like, here's a hero I really like. So if I'm looking at this quickly, I can just pick off the top. And then if I know that I need to fit a certain thing, I can say, okay, I need to pick a hero from either here or from here, and then I just kind of pick whatever looks best. So it narrows down my options a lot better. Okay, so that's kind of giving you an idea, and obviously the random drafts are different every time, but it's just so much easier if you know where your heroes are, where the roles are. So yeah, I think that's definitely very helpful. Yeah, so that's pretty good. Hopefully we'll do more. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, do it all. Makes the video more popular. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, guys. You can call me Cobb.